quick dive into some key details of your grant agreement. We'll cover a mix of topics that we often get questions about here at EUKI. Some areas that are especially important and some points that we notice that recipients sometimes overlook. So in the PowerPoint presentation, you will always see the contract paragraph I'm talking about. I really know it's not ideal to have a slide full of text. Sorry about that, but that's a little bit how it goes when we're discussing a contract. So please just use it as a reference. I'll walk you through the key points of each paragraph. So it's really more important to listen than to read along. All right, so let's dive right in. So let's kick things off with a 20% rule. This is a really handy and commonly used rule that lets you shift the funds between budget categories up to 20%. Budget category are those lines in your budget like external services, staff, transportation, travel costs, and so on. But here's a catch, obviously, or like a very obvious catch. You can only use the 20% rule if you offset the same amount from other budget categories. Also, this shift only applies to direct costs, so it's not for forwarding of funds or administration costs. Your partners can also shift funds between their own budget in the same way, but it's not allowed to shift funds between partners. And we also recommend checking in with your financial advisor at EUKI before making any shifts, especially with staff costs, just to make sure everything is in order. And please don't forget, any shifts must be reported in your financial report. So we often get questions about own contributions. So let me walk you through some key points. On the cover note of your financial report, which you can see an excerpt of here, you always need to indicate the own funds that were used during the reporting period. Also, please make sure that you properly document your own contributions in your bookkeeping as project earnings, just like you would with the EUKI funds. And this is really important because it ensures that you can provide proof of using of your own funds if asked. And this is, of course, especially crucial in case there is an audit. Another thing to keep in mind is Article 1.5 of the contract. It is mentioned here in this red circle. So the article itself says that if your own contributions are lower than what is stated in the contract, GIZ has the right to reduce its grant by the same proportion. And don't forget as well, you also need to submit an inventory list with your financial report for any items purchased during the reporting period that have a value over 800 euro. Okay, next, let's talk about exchange rates. And this is also something we get a lot of questions about. So you want to know how to handle exchange rates when dealing with foreign currencies. So if you are in a country where the local currency isn't the euro, you'll need to use the exchange rate from your bank voucher on the day the funds were transferred. You can only use the info euro converter in exceptional cases and only if you've received prior approval from GIZ. So please don't just use it, but inform us before or get the approval from us. Another important thing to remember is that once you've used an exchange rate for a transfer, you need to stick with the same rate until all the funds from that transfer have been fully spent, even if the daily exchange rate changes over the time. Next up is due diligence of the partners. So this point is about your work with your implementing partners, and in the contract they are referred to as third-party recipients. So as you've all been informed, it's really important to do proper due diligence on the partners you've chosen. And this is actually part of the contract specified here in Article 5.3. Just a heads up, we or the auditor may review the due diligence process that you should have done. So please make sure that you have all the documentation in place. Next up is a contract with your partners, with your co-partners. So I'm assuming all of you have a consortium agreement in place with your partners. As stated in Article 5.2, you're required to make sure that all the key terms from your grant agreement with us also applies to your partners. These essential terms include things like rules around reporting, procurement, documentation standards, and so on. So please double check that these points are clearly laid out in your agreement with your partners. Next up is responsibilities as main recipient. So as a sole contracting party with GIZ, you as a main recipient are generally responsible for making sure your partners are properly implementing the project. And I really want to emphasize this again, like we don't have a contract with your partners. This is something that very often comes up. So whatever happens to the contract, we will always, we as GIZ will always consult you as a main recipient. And this means you should always review the financial report of your partners before sending anything to us. And also, just to clarify, as recently such a question came up, we will always request vouchers directly from you, even if it's from your partner's budget. So it's really important to keep good communication with your partners and to make sure you get all the necessary records on time. So this is one of the favorite topics, procurement. I'm sure you're all familiar with this article, but it's really so important that I would like to emphasize it again. Please make sure you're always fully complying with the GIZ procurement guidelines mentioning in Annex 4A. This is really critical because if there is any non-compliance with our procurement rules during an audit, it could really lead to major findings or ineligible costs. And speaking of an audit, just a reminder, you could be selected for an audit at any time. Okay, this one is pretty straightforward. You need to keep all documents related to your project for 10 years after submitting your financial report. Now let's move on to impairments. This one is a quick one too. And also very obvious. If there are any major changes in your project's risk assessment or any significant financial or technical changes, please let us know right away so we can discuss how to move forward together. And the last point I would like to mention is the annexes to the contract. So at the end of your contract, you will find a list of all the annexes. As you can see here, there are even more annexes, but they didn't fit in the slide. So just a reminder, these are an essential part of the grant agreement. You see here, Annex 1 and Annex 2, the budget and the proposal. This is something that you have submitted, but please really familiarize yourself with the other annexes if you haven't done so already. You can access all the annexes through this link. There we go. And the link takes you to our GIZ website. As you can see here, this is an excerpt from it. Make sure to select the drop-down menu. It's here, this one, that matches your contract start date to find all the relevant records and templates. This is especially relevant if you had a contract with EUKI before. So for this contract now that started now or will start on the 1st of February, please select the right drop-down. And when you're looking for answers about financial implementation, your first stop should always be the Annex 3A, financial requirements. So this document has a lot of helpful info, including further explanations of certain contract details. And I've also highlighted the inventory list here, which we mentioned earlier. It's often overlooked, so please make sure to check it out. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to carefully read through the procurement guidelines, as I mentioned before. That wraps up our quick dive into the contract details. Thank you very much for your attention.